He was just another normal American guy working in Russia. He struggled with each passing day, but the thought that this suffering will enable him to live a happy life with his wife contented him. But on that particular day, his life took a sharp turn when Russian mafia killed his wife in front of his eyes.
Police! Militia! Can you speak English?
He realized now his days on planet Earth are marked with a single purpose, and that is vengeance. So, he took a strange step. Welcome back to Paramount Recaps. I don't have many subscribers, but your single comment is a ray of hope to motivate me. In the furthest corner of the prison's solitary confinement, there was a unique prisoner. Every day, he would climb up the walls, not to escape, but to strengthen his body. While the others took breaks, he was lifting weights. While they rested, he was practicing boxing and doing pull-ups and push-ups. During work hours, he carried the heaviest logs, and on rainy days, he ran to build his endurance. His intense drive to become stronger stemmed from a deep-seated hatred. Before he was locked up, he was just an ordinary engineer with a beautiful wife. One night, a criminal broke into their home. Kyle LeBlanc heard his wife's screams for help over the phone and rushed home, only to find her lying lifeless in a pool of blood. Devastated, Kyle managed to capture the assailant and bring him to court. But to his shock, the wealthy criminal bribed the judge and was acquitted, walking away a free man. Consumed with rage at the sight of the man who murdered his wife, he grabbed a police officer's gun and shot the killer dead, finally avenging his wife's death. However, this act led to an even greater tragedy. Kyle was sentenced to life in prison and sent to one of the most notorious prisons in the region, where the inmates were brutal and violence was an everyday occurrence. When Kyle arrived, the guards stripped him of all his belongings. One guard took a liking to Kyle's wedding ring, and when Kyle refused to hand it over, the guard beat him savagely and took the ring by force. Inside the prison, there was a sadistic inmate named Andre who took pleasure in tormenting the weaker prisoners. Kyle's cellmate, Billy, was often the target of Andre's bullying, while the guards ignored it due to Andre's bribes. That night, Billy's cries of pain echoed throughout the cell block, keeping Kyle awake. The next morning, when Kyle saw Billy's battered state and Andre's smug face, he was reminded of the man who had killed his wife. Overcome with fury, Kyle punched Andre in the face, sparking a fight between them. The guards intervened, but they only restrained Kyle. It was clear they were in cahoots with Andre. As a result, Kyle was thrown into a small, dark cell, the most feared place in the entire prison. The floor was covered in sewage, reeking of a foul stench, and the walls were stained with the blood of a previous inmate who had committed suicide. The sight alone was enough to send chills down anyone's spine. The daily meal was a bowl of slop that looked like pig feed. Sleeping meant lying on a cold stone slab next to the putrid pipes. Kyle soon found himself at his breaking point. Late at night, he tore his prison uniform into strips and tried to fashion a makeshift rope to hang himself. But even in his desperation to die, the flimsy prison uniform failed him. Frustrated, he began banging his head against the wall until he lost consciousness. At that moment, a moth fluttered in front of him, circling for a while before landing near his bowl of food. Kyle picked up the bowl, and the moth settled on the spoon as if reminding him to eat and survive. In that instant, he forced himself to swallow the unpalatable food, one bite at a time. When Kyle was finally released from the dark cell, the guards transferred him to a different cell. This new cell had 4 beds, but only one occupant. The guard coldly informed him that a serial killer lived there and had already killed his 3 previous cellmates. The guard then ominously suggested that if Kyle didn't want to die, he should pay up to arrange for a different cell. Kyle was then locked inside, realizing he was now sharing the space with a menacing figure named 451. Fear gripped Kyle, and the next day, he approached the guard, handing over all the money he had managed to scrounge together in hopes of getting transferred. The guard took the money but deceitfully claimed it wasn't enough. Kyle knew he had been conned. Over time, Kyle learned that the prison was divided into 3 major factions that constantly fought for dominance. The man he initially clashed with, Andre, was not only the second in command of one of these factions, but also the reigning champion of the prison's underground fighting ring. Yes, this prison had a brutal fight club where the winners gained power and status, while the losers were beaten to death. The guards and even the warden knew all about it, and not only allowed it to continue but secretly profited from it. Andre's gang wasn't about to let Kyle off the hook. During work hours, they ambushed him and gave him a vicious beating, while the guards stood by and watched. Not only did the guards not intervene, but they tossed Kyle back into his cell afterward. In the depths of despair, Kyle finally came to a realization. In this dog-eat-dog world, violence was the only way to protect himself. He began training like a man possessed. He climbed walls, did pull-ups, push-ups, punched sandbags, lifted weights, carried heavy sacks, and ran to build his endurance. After months of grueling training, Kyle was ready for his first fight. His opponent was none other than his nemesis, Andre. The moment the fight kicked off, Kyle Liebland took a brutal hit to the abdomen. Andre was in complete control, delivering blow after blow, but Kyle endured, waiting for the right moment to strike back. When that chance came, he retaliated with a punch, quickly following it up with a flurry of punches. However, Andre soon regained his footing and resumed his merciless assault on Kyle. He grabbed Kyle and executed a shoulder throw, slamming him hard onto the ground, then viciously kneed him in the head. Kyle was left beaten and bloodied, struggling to stand, only to be kicked back down. Finally, Andre grabbed Kyle's leg and smashed it against a pillar. In a last-ditch effort, Kyle kicked Andre in the groin and then lunged at him, sinking his teeth into Andre's neck. The tables turned in an instant. The guards rushed in to separate them, but it was too late. Andre's windpipe had been torn out, and he died on the spot. This shocking scene left everyone stunned, covered in blood. Kyle let out a roar that kept everyone at a distance. From that moment, Kyle became the prison's new fighting champion. His style was wild and relentless. He would take punches without flinching, then respond with a barrage of blows until his opponent was down. Since the fight rules dictated that the loser would die, Kyle killed one opponent after another, steadily climbing the ranks. He even cut his long hair and styled it neatly, adopting the image of a boss, a complete transformation from the man he once was. Unlike Kyle, his cellmate Billy had a different approach to dealing with the prison's violence. He just wanted to escape. Billy made several attempts to break out, only to be caught each time, but he never gave up. One day, he used a stolen key to unlock the cell door and was on the verge of retrieving a hidden pair of pliers when a guard caught him in the act. This time, Billy's fate was sealed. The guard handed him over to a massive inmate who tortured him until he was barely alive. Before he died, Billy told Kyle, "Don't become what they want you to be." Those words hit Kyle hard, and he realized his mistake. He decided to resist the cycle of violence. Another fight came, and this time, Kyle's opponent was the massive man who had killed Billy. But instead of fighting back, Kyle surrendered. This caused the warden, who was watching the fight with guests, to lose face. Furious, the warden ordered the guards to hang Kyle on an iron frame, declaring that he would be left there until he agreed to fight or die. Day after day, Kyle was left exposed to the scorching sun and drenching rain. His steadfast resistance began to influence the other inmates, who gradually realized that in this prison, the warden was the only winner, and they were merely pawns in his game. As a result, the factions stopped fighting, and the arena fell silent. The warden's money-making scheme crumbled, and peace triumphed over violence. One day, the warden had Kyle released and planned to use him as an example. Instead of ordering the guards to attack him, the warden released another prisoner, a giant, monstrous man who stood over 2 meters tall. The giant loosened his collar and charged at Kyle, beating him savagely and trying to strangle him to death. In desperation, Kyle pounded on the iron door, and to his surprise, the giant stopped. It turned out that whenever Kyle had been locked in solitary confinement, he would hear someone pounding on the wall next door and would respond with 2 taps. Over time, he had formed a bond with this mysterious cellmate, who turned out to be the giant. Recognizing Kyle, the giant reached out to touch him. The warden, shocked by this turn of events, immediately ordered the guards to draw their guns. In a heroic act, the giant charged at the guards, taking bullets but overpowering them and even breaking through the prison doors before finally collapsing. The enraged prisoners saw their chance and began attacking the guards, sparking a full-blown riot. Violence erupted, fires broke out, and prisoners attempted to escape. It wasn't until the guards and armed forces arrived with machine guns that the chaos was forcibly subdued. Amid the turmoil, Kyle encountered his old cellmate from room 451. It turned out that he wasn't a murderer, but a judge who had killed only the most heinous criminals. Room 451 had kept a diary full of evidence, detailing the warden's violent profiteering over the years. He handed the diary to Kyle, urging him to expose the warden's corruption. As for escaping, room 451 had a plan. He wanted Kyle to participate in one last fight. Whether he won or lost, the warden, to maintain his pride, would send Kyle to the execution ground, providing the perfect opportunity to escape. Not long after, Kyle faced his final opponent, the massive man who had killed Billy. This time, Kyle fought with all his strength, quickly overpowering his opponent and impaling him on a wooden stake, avenging Billy's death. True to form, Kyle was then taken to the execution grounds. In the garage, room 451, who had been hiding, suddenly attacked, helping Kyle defeat the guards. Room 451 then instructed Kyle to change into different clothes and get into the warden's car, but he himself stayed behind, saying he had more important things to do. Kyle, now dressed in the warden's clothes, passed through several checkpoints, carrying the evidence that would expose the warden's crimes, and finally regained his freedom. Meanwhile, room 451 infiltrated the warden's office, steadily approaching with pliers in hand. When the guards burst in, they found the warden with his tongue forcibly removed, a fitting punishment for a man who had profited from violence. In the end, the man who thrived on brutality was destroyed by it. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps the channel out. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss an update. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment below with your suggestions for future videos, any questions you have, or just to say hi. Your feedback is super important to us and helps us create better content for you. Also, feel free to share this video with your friends, family, and on social media. It really makes a big difference and helps our community grow. You can follow us on Insert your social media handles for more updates and behind-the-scenes content. Thanks again for your support, and we'll see you in the next video.